Okay. Go ahead, Adrian, take it away.
Okay, so I am just going to go over the TASL, which is the Teacher Assessment of Spoken Language, and then as like a brief overview. And then Natasha's gonna then build, and then I'm heading out, and then Natasha's gonna go over how to actually apply everything. But I wanted to give you guys a good idea of what you're looking at. So do you guys all have it that you can see it, or as I go through it?
If not, it's in the chat if you want to download it quicker.
Sorry, Natasha, say that again.
If they don't have it, they can just download it. It's in the chat if they want to download it.
Okay, so it's broken, the tassel is broken up into levels. The first level being single words, and so there are two parts to it. This part, which is talking about the levels at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. On 3, 4, and 5 are on the back. And then there's like a booklet type thing, which has all the syntactic elements broken up by categories. So one is like your actual data form, and the other is kind of your cheat sheet reference form. So the assessment form is the one I'm going to talk about first, which is broken up into the levels. And so you're looking at level 1 being single words and 2-word combinations. And as you can see, that's different than any other level is it has an L column and an S column, L being in a lesson setting and S being spontaneously. The whole form is for those language samples to be used, to be keeping track of their spontaneous language. But at the very beginning level, you might not have a child, you might have a child who's only using language in a lesson setting and not really using much spontaneously. So that's where at that very beginning level, they do have that lesson setting column. And really that's more of a vocabulary kind of level where you're just teaching the vocabulary, not really necessarily as much, the bottom part is with the 2-word combinations is when you start to get into more activities. Then you go to level 2, which is just the next step, and you just have simple sentences of 3 or more words. And then you get into the sentence types. So subject, verb, object, subject, verb, prepositional phrase, subject, verb, object, prepositional phrase, and interrogatives / questions. I'll talk about the syntactic elements below right now, and then you'll kind of see that them change as we go through. But the syntactic elements are what you should be seeing, and about the number, so that number is in parentheses. So when you look at noun modifiers, it says 10, that you want to get a good variety of noun modifiers, 5 pronouns, 5 prepositions at this beginning simple sentence level. That is approximately what you want to be seeing. And as you're looking at targets and you're thinking about your goal, you're thinking, as I'm trying to get the sentence types above, these are the syntactic elements that I want to see in those sentence types. So they mirror each other. So you can't say the child has subject, verb, object, subject, verb, prepositional phrase, subject, verb, object, prepositional phrase, if they're only using one verb type. You want to see the variety at the bottom while seeing the sentences at the top, if that makes sense. So that same thing is true as you go further, is those numbers are going to increase or the elements are going to change. So if you flip the page, then you see level 3, that is the beginning of complex sentences of 6 or more words. So the level is going up, the level of words is going up, and the complexity. So then you have the introduction of the complex language, which is often a hard level for students, introducing direct discourse, which is quoting another person, 2 clauses joined by conjunction, and just more complex interrogatives. So as you can see, then you look at the syntactic elements in those, now you're looking for 5 different question types. They're all building though. So just because a child has at that simpler level has question what, that question might need to be reviewed, or who might need to be reviewed as the sentence type gets longer. So it's not necessarily 5 new question types, but but more now in a more complex sentence, in a longer sentence, but still including all the pieces. Natasha, were you going to ask me something?
I might leave it to the end. I don't want to get off on a tangent.
What?
I don't want to get off on a tangent. So, but something that I've never asked you just came into my brain. So I'm going to ask you at the end.
Okay. Then level 4, it looks at is all complex sentences. So you won't see that subject, verb, object, subject, verb, prepositional phrase. Not that those can't be, you can't have those sentences at that length. They have 8 or more words, but now at that level, the child's really focusing. You are focusing more, and the child is focusing more on that complex language. And then as you go into level 5, you're entering very complex language. They're using 2 different conjunctions. They're using direct discourse and indirect discourse. Indirect discourse being like they're not directly quoting somebody, but they're saying what somebody said. And at the bottom, now you have more conjunctions, gerunds and participles. Gerunds being using a verb as a subject. So running is my favorite thing to do for exercise. Running being the verb as the subject. And then participles, you guys might know this, I'm just going to say it, but participles being using a verb as an adjective. So the girl wearing the blue shirt, wearing being describing the girl, but the verb. So that's that form. So then what this other form does anybody have questions about that form that I just went over? Denise, you're muted again.
It would be nice if there was a actual intervention manual for this sequence.
Just wait.
Okay, because it would be really nice to be able to follow that. Okay.
That's here.
So yeah, there's that there. And so also we can look, so hold on, I won't go any further into that. Okay, so then this, as you can see, as I just went through all of those, includes all of those syntactic elements. So as you're looking at each one and you're thinking, okay, so let's look at level 2. You're looking at level 2 and you think of 5 pronouns. Then you're going into that pronoun section and you're saying, okay, I, me, he, she, it, you, they. And the good thing about this is they are pretty much ordered by complexity. So when you're, like I just said, if you're looking at the pronouns, you see that those that him, her, them, us in that personal section are the last ones on there. Those are the most complex of those. You look at the possessives, mine, my, his, her, your, our are at the beginning, whereas theirs, ours, yours are towards the end of that section. So you can use that in, Denise, what you were saying is, what's my order? Where am I going? It kind of does that for you. Look even more so, you can see it in the verbs and the prepositions, that you look at the prepositions, it starts with in, on, under, the first prepositions I would teach. Up, down, around, over, those are kind of a little bit more, but then that next, so that one's a little off. Kind of in that order, not necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily do up, down, around, over before I would do next to, behind. So don't take it as concrete as that, but for the most part, they do kind of go in that order of complexity. And again, with the verbs, you can see that it does a little bit in which you're going to look at that first column first and that second column second, but I would say that you're probably going to work on is, am, are, or present progressive that before you would start worrying about the past tense. So yeah, that's, and the same thing with the questions, where, who, what color are those first questions that you're going to be working on. And then it kind of gets more complex as you look at the forms. And I feel like, Denise, that was one of the questions you were asking. So when looking at a goal and so that's the tassel break, a very quick version of the tassel breakdown. When writing a goal, Natasha, are you going to pull up a goal for me? Okay. We usually break how I would like it best, and Michelle has seen this, I'm sure, because I think we wrote it that way before, when Michelle still had it, one of our friends, can you make it go there, is that I would write the language goal into two parts. One being the first half of that level, so if the sentence types, and the second goal being the syntactic elements. So, yeah, yes. So it's a separate goal entirely, even though, like I said, when talking about the tassel, they mirror each other. The reason to separate them as goals, so the first one, you're just saying that the child will be able to say the following sentence, produce the following sentence types: subject, verb, object, subject, verb, prepositional phrase, subject, verb, object, prepositional phrase, interactives. That is a goal for the level 2. So it mirrors those sentence types exactly. Then the second goal being, if you look at your form, it is this exact same as those syntactic elements at the bottom of the form. So it's 10 noun modifiers, 5 prepositions, 3 adverbs, 2 verb tenses. The reason to break them up is that even though they will go kind of hand in hand, is that you can focus on the sentence types. And then in the second one, you're really listing, these are all the noun modifiers they're using. These are all the pronouns they're using. In some ways that that affects the top, but I think you can get bogged down in one or the other, and it can get messy if you try to put them all in one. So a lot of information you have in one goal, whereas separating them really kind of organizes it, probably more for you and the parent than in trying to write progress and comment on how the children are doing. You can see that how we kind of break down in that way, just to so that you're creating just maybe a list for this goal, the second language goal, but really maybe more of a commentary in that first of the sentence types, but then really saying these are the noun modifiers they're using. And this is all in a lesson setting, though your language samples. So here, go back to progress if you can, and without showing student. Just saying this is what they're using in a lesson setting with this many prompts, or with fewer, with a question prompt, and listing those different syntactic elements. Okay, and then what I was starting to say was, when you're doing your language sample, obviously that's their spontaneous language, and that's usually what we use the form for, is as you're getting their spontaneous language, using this as an assessment tool. For the goals, I would suggest always writing it in a lesson setting, because that's when you're doing your syntax or your language activities in that lesson setting. So with a prompt, what is the child using? So if you have a child who spontaneously is talking in simple sentences, then maybe that level 3, that next step up is what your goal is, because the lesson setting is going to be always a bump above where they are spontaneously. So if they're using 2-word combinations and that's all they're doing, then I'd probably write the goal for level 2 and saying, okay, now I want them to start actually creating sentences, but in a lesson setting, because I'm seeing this is what they're doing spontaneously. So I'm going to bump it up to this level in a lesson setting with their goal.
So just to kind of piggyback off that, to make it more like real. Okay, we just had a fire drill. That's why I'm in my car. Which whatever. So this is like the goal, Michelle, that I just wrote for our little guy. Like a little guy that we evaluated on Friday. Really good at labeling. Like he could do pretty good at labeling colors. He's starting to count. He will repeat anything you ask him to, but spontaneously will do very minimal. And so like he's at level 1 currently, because he's really not doing a lot of combinations, but we wrote his goal for level 2 because we write goals for a year of progress. So yeah.
Well, and for him, if I think I know, And then for him, he's also that if he's using that and hasn't necessarily been in a school environment yet, then that's something that once he gets that more direct instruction with the syntactic elements, then he will start being able to put the pieces together, or then put those sentences together. There are exceptions to the rule of maybe you have a child that's halfway through the, it's not always going to be picture perfect for the levels, the goals being, but I mean, for the most part, and it doesn't always just sometimes it takes time, like that level 3 enters that complex language. So sometimes, depending on the child, you might write the goal for just the simple part of that level 3, where it's just simple sentence of 6 words, knowing that it's going to take that child a long time to get to that complex, but they're definitely ready to add more language to what they're saying, but just not ready for the direct discourse, the conjunctions yet. So there are times where you might say, I want to split this apart. It's not something like you're writing the goal wrong if you just take pieces of it and make it specific to the child. But that's just kind of an overview of how a cookie cutter way of writing it that would work depending on the child. Do you guys have any questions about that piece?
So just to clarify, because you guys are frozen on me again, are you writing 2 different goals, Natasha? One for the actual sentence types and then one for the elements?
Yes, that's how we currently do it, because it's just too much to keep in one goal. It's just like more organized separating it, and it's just easier to write progress on having it separate, because if you had to try to get that all in one paragraph for a progress note, it would just be a word nightmare. And so it's just
Denise, the other thing to think about it is if you're saying they're using the pronouns, and talking about pronouns or talking about verbs, negatives, anything that isn't like necessarily prepositions, or then you're going to end up listing they're doing these things in this sentence type, but not these things in this sentence type. So they're asking the question words, but only with the questions. They're including the prepositions, but only in these sentences. You know what I mean? So you end up by separating them, you're able to say, these are syntactic elements they're using. And we're seeing them in a variety of sentence types. That is the hope. Unless you
I like it. I mean, the
specific.
second one, the elements, is more like vocabulary,
Yeah, yep.
Absolutely. So maybe you're saying.
I like that. And then do you divide it out as in the lesson setting versus spontaneous?
So I would write the goal in a lesson setting, because one, spontaneously data would be a lot harder. You can judge based on how you're prompting them in the lesson setting. I always write in a lesson setting. But what Natasha tends to do, what a lot of teachers tend to do, is give a little blurb of, this is what they're doing in a lesson setting. In a natural setting or spontaneously, we're seeing that the child is starting to use simple sentences, or the child is still using 2-word combinations without prompting. Then you can still give a blurb to kind of, which I think can be helpful in how the parents are reading it, of, okay, please know though that when we're not prompting, they still need that prompting in order to put a sentence together, or they're starting to put it together on their own. So I like giving a little blurb about what they're doing spontaneously, but typically I would write the goal in a spontaneous setting, or in a lesson setting.
I mean, I like how it's divided. I mean, I like dividing it that way, and never had thought to ever do something like that. So it's nice to.
The other thing which you said is it's almost like vocabulary for the syntactic elements. The other way to think about it that we often write, especially for one of the students we work with together, who Michelle's had before, so she'll understand this. But for those younger students, you can say, here are the syntactic elements they're using. So here are the noun modifiers they're using. But here are the ones they understand. So you can really get more in depth about those syntactic elements where if it was all together, it wouldn't work as well. And a lot of times at a younger age, they can show an understanding of their colors or big and little, and some, especially those noun modifiers, without necessarily being able to use them in a sentence.
I'm going to transition back into the school quickly.
Okay, I'll just ask for more questions until you get back, and then I'm going to let you take over. So as far, Denise, you asked a question of like kind of knowing then by taking the language sample, then was your question about like knowing then how to put that on this form?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think if you have a good goal written, you can use it well. It's just, again, for me, then knowing this, and I like how it's written. And then, like I said, it's just like a pull this, pull that to work on it. And like Natasha said, she's going to touch on that, as far as then that intervention piece. So you really feel like you're not missing anything, I guess, is my biggest thing.
Right. And I think that's where, so one other thing I'm going to say before I let Natasha take over, this will really just kind of like segue in that I actually told you I was going to do, and I almost forgot, is the other way to use this, the cheat sheet type, with all the syntactic elements, is you write your goal based on the level. And then what I would do is based on those syntactic elements. So at level, let's say level 2 again, because I'm just guessing that's where, knowing you're all at a younger level, that maybe that's a level you guys might be working on. That you take those noun modifiers and then use this and highlight those 10 noun modifiers as these are my goals for the year. So if I need to get 10 noun modifiers, I'm not worried about possessives yet, but I'm worried about hot and cold and dirty and clean and colors and numbers and more, and then you go into and then you highlight 5 pronouns that you want to be. So then that highlight ends up being your pull, what you're pulling from of, okay, these are my syntactic elements based on the goal. And this is, so then every time you've worked on something and you go to something else, what's that piece that you haven't hit yet that you've highlighted and trying to get for the year based on the syntactic elements that you decided that were going to be part of the goal. And so that's usually what I do at the beginning of the year is say, okay, boom, boom, boom. I've highlighted 5 pronouns. Those are the 5 pronouns. The 2 verbs is, am, are, present progressive, maybe are those first ones that I'm trying to get. And then those are my highlighted new ones, so you can use this as a planning sheet too, in kind of mapping out, this is where I want to go. And then lesson plan, and that's where Natasha will take over.
My one question, Adrian, I can't believe this has ever really come up, but do you use, or just without us even talking about it, you use this as a writing piece too? Like you just can pull this for our kids who struggle with getting their language on the page, writing wise, to just analyze the writing this way too?
You absolutely could.
I mean, I've actually done it, but I feel like you could. It'd be a really easy way to just make sure that they're using different types of language in their writing.
So I have a teacher who she has a student who he's older but got implanted late, and so he's in 3rd grade, so he's working on the writing, but he's definitely at that beginning level, simple sentences. He understands complex sentences, but we're just working on simple sentences. But he's in 3rd grade, so they're working on writing. So she makes them kind of makes them parallel. So they'll talk about something, and then they're writing it down. So she's kind of using hand in hand, and this is the verb form we're using. Then we're practicing that simple past tense. So we're going to write about what we did this weekend. Mm-hmm. Or we're working on will, so we're going to write about what we're doing this coming weekend. So she makes sure that the writing piece is complementing everything she's working on.
Yeah.
And so she kind of does that because she's constantly thinking of the language piece.
Well,
Sometimes the writing's happening in the classroom, but for that specific situation where you do have a child where you're pulling them so much, it can be.
well, and I'm thinking even of our little girl, like we just started doing that, and we know that like verbally she can say the girl is walking, but she sometimes leaves off in her writing the ing, or whatever. So
But to see it happen,
Mhm.
to say it and to write it, then is also just another piece of like remembering it as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay,
for sure.
that was my question.
Okay, well, if you guys think of anything else, you can definitely email me. I work with Natasha weekly, so I'm always available for a quick question,
I do have-
and so just let me know as you're
Can I-
trying to figure stuff out.
Can I ask one quick question?
Mhm.
Do these have in the booklet age norms? Like level 1 is approximately, do they give that to you or not?
We don't put it in there, but what I would, because of just, I think then parents get caught down, like bogged down on the norms. What
Because like
what
for us, we
anyone,
do our own stages and we kind of have like a month range. So I was just curious if they kind of say, well, this is kind of level 1's expected of the 2 to 3 year olds. I didn't know if there was something like that.
so what we would say is that entering kindergarten, you have children who are understanding for sure level 5, that very complex language. That's a classroom teacher in kindergarten is talking at level 4 and level 5, giving directions like that, unless it's a pull out classroom or something like that. But the teacher they're definitely understanding, starting kindergarten level 5, and occasionally use it. Maybe it's not always grammatically correct, but a kindergartner is probably attempting to use that very complex language. So yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, and then kind of walking back from there, it's about what you're saying, 2 to 3, is that level 2, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and then into kindergarten. Natasha, did you have a question again?
Nope. I'm
Okay. All right. Well, it's nice to meet and see everyone, and let me know, like I said, if you need anything.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
okay. So now what I'm going to show you is, so now you've done your language sample, right? You've went through and probably put them at a level at this point. Okay, you've written a goal. So I'm going to show you what a syntax plan would look like, and then how you go about doing that and figuring out what you're going to do. And I have a multitude of options, so that you can kind of just see different. So this one is for the it's a before and after. So teaching before and after as a syntactical element. So before and after as conjunction. So this is a higher level one, because before and after, would kind of come in that. I can't quite pinpoint it right now, but this is higher. So I write the target on top, and then the procedures of how I'm going to do this. So making sentence strips, so that you have like the first part and the second part, and then you just say, tell me the sentence using before and after. So I would have a sentence strip that said, I put toothpaste on my toothbrush, I put it in my mouth. So you would make them, they would have to pick those because they'd see that they match, right? And then they'd have to say, I put the toothpaste on my toothbrush, before I put it in my mouth. But then you make them switch it and use after. Okay, so that's, and you can do as I try to make it as functional as possible with the vocabulary that they're most familiar with, because you don't want it to be a vocabulary issue when you're teaching a new syntactic element. Okay, so that's activity number 1. Okay, so then here is one like using the infinitive to. So why do you need this, or why do you need a? Okay, so we're teaching her that to do something, to whatever. So I need a pencil to do my homework. So I would have asked her, why do you need a pencil? She would have to say, because my student would have, before we did this, say, I need a pencil for my homework. So teaching them the to do something. I need keys to unlock the door. Why do you need this? And I maybe, or why do you need keys? So this is higher level. So verb S, so pictures of people, singular and plural. We're gonna play a matching game. She'll flip over a person picture, and then she'll flip over a direct object picture. What does she do, or what do they do? The family, so she would have flipped over a picture of a family. She would have flipped over a picture of a game. The family plays a game at the table. Now, again, this is written for a student that's using like level 3 and 4 language. Okay, but this could be a 3rd grader for sure, 3rd or 4th grader, and making sure that they're using that final S on their verb versus ing, or no S at all, or past tense, or what have you. Okay, just a target for themselves using that pronoun or possessive, depending. But so you're going back. So what does he, she, you, need, want, have to do? So that's the prompting question. So we were focusing on ourselves versus themselves. So making sure when she's including herself in the sentence, she's using ourself when she's not themselves. And so, what do you and Noah do on Friday nights? Noah and I watched a movie by ourselves. Okay. What did Natasha and Jimmy do this weekend? Natasha and Jimmy went to a movie by themselves. Okay. And so for our higher kids, meaning age or language, they might not need visuals. You can just do this as a conversation. But having these written ahead of time is pivotal because you will not be able to come up with them on the spot. And then another target, these, those, this, that, with noun modifiers. So having pictures of items. So the prompting phrase would be, tell me about the boots. Okay. These boots are tall, but those are short. So you'd have, it's like a comparison. So I'd have a picture of a boy and a girl in a blue shirt and a red shirt. And I'll be like, tell me about the shirts. This shirt is red, but that one is blue. And so you just need those comparison pictures. And again, trying to make it as basic as possible when they're trying to learn these new phrases. So now I'm going to show you one that's way more basic, but I wanted you to see like how high it could go and really, but how basic the activity actually is, even though you're using higher level language. So then the other one I will pull up is
like a level 2. Okay. Okay, like level 1, level 2. So TASA level 1, our target is noun verb. We're gonna have a girl and boy dolls. And we're working on noun plus verb. And we would have taught all of these vocabulary words prior to this lesson. At least we would have tried to. Obviously, when this lesson was happening, they had already taught this. This is my wheelhouse right here because most kids know these. And then having a boy and a girl. Sometimes I have a mom or a dad, so that working on those two. But so here's kind of more procedural. The last one you saw was me after 3 years of doing this. This is me year 1 of writing the procedures of how I actually do these lessons. And so it like just lines out exactly step for step how you progress through, making sure that the student labels all items, because if they can't label it, you have another vocabulary word to teach, and they will surprise you. You know this with things that they don't know. Then we model the targets that we are wanting them to use. So I would take the girl jump, girl jump. Okay, boy sleep, girl run, boy walk. Okay, I would model all that. And then, so then the student will show understanding of these sentences by demonstrating the action. So then it goes into a receptive language situation of I say it, the kid displays it. So I say, girl walk. The kid takes the girl and shows me walk. Okay. Once they have shown the understanding, then they become the teacher and I become the student, and they use their language and tell me, and then I do it. And sometimes if your kid is like our little girl, loves to be the teacher, so she's like super motivated by this. And then I purposely do it wrong and she just thinks it's hilarious because she loves to correct me, and you know the drill. So then you just go through that, and this can be very, very quick. But if you're working on, you can also kind of incorporate something like this to work on that vocabulary piece to make sure that they've got it in some kind of different, not just a drill type thing. So that is a very simple syntax thing. But I want, like, this would be like, if you get the kid for 20 minutes, this could be 5 of it. And then you can go on and do like this next one that I have, which is prepositions. Again, vocabulary, but you're teaching in and under, okay? So you have a paper, cup, Play-Doh is the vocabulary, but the materials would be cup, paper, and Play-Doh, okay? Again, all of the procedures, same sequence of events. You're going to have the kid label, you present it. Once they show understanding, they become the teacher. And then language target. So in this activity, they're just like making something with Play-Doh and hiding it in or under the cup or under the paper. This also comes in handy if you're working on following directions, because then you can say, put the blank under the blank. And then, and you have 2 critical elements there. If you have something else to hide, like if you have Play-Doh and a ball, put the Play-Doh under the paper. Okay, well, they have to cue into 2 elements there, paper versus, or the ball versus Play-Doh, and paper versus cup. But then when they're the teacher, they're telling you to do that.
think you should have them make you, I think you should make the intervention model, Natasha, or the intervention manual, I mean, maybe.
I was thinking the same thing when you were asking for that, because Adrian, has tons of these hard drives of all of the past lesson plans, because like when I first started working with Adrian, I had to center my lesson plans each week. And so a lesson plan for my student at that time was like 4 syntax lessons per week, because we would be working on so many elements, because the language was at that level. Where, currently with our first grader, we were working on all of these syntactic elements. We were working on noun verb. We were working on in, on, and under. And we were just building, but none of that was transferring to language. And so that's what I want you to see now, is what a language plan looks like, because once they master a syntactic element, that's great. But the big thing is they have to transfer that into language, and they have to transfer that into all those different types of language levels. And so here would be a language lesson plan incorporating 2-word combinations. So it says syntax, but there should be language. Okay, TASL level 1, 2-word combinations. We're just doing like a peanut butter and apple snack. And so then we just write anything and everything we want to target the child to say. I will show you another one, but like that, and then I'm guessing this person highlighted the things that were hard during that day. So then, but we just kind of write down what we want the kid to say. But let me see if I have the other one saved. I want to show you, this one. Here's like peanut butter and jelly. This is how I started writing them, because it was just a lot at first. So I had to organize my thoughts. So you can see here in the vocabulary, like I labeled the verb when the verbs that we were doing, and because that was something like we needed the verbs. So the procedures, very like syntax, we're putting like they need to label everything, they need to be able to do that. But then I always wrote out what my prompt was. What am I going to say to get the child to say this? Because they can get so much of the language they need from how you ask the question, and they need to be able to cue in to listen for that. And a lot of kids have no clue that you're actually giving them the answer. And so like for this example, like what will we do as I'm showing the peanut butter or the bread, the bag of bread? And if they don't say anything, or it's completely off the wall, you can ask it in a different way, which, will we open the bread? And then hopefully they respond, open bread. And so then I go in and I underline the words that I want them to say, like the articles where that's somewhere else. But so yeah. So then I go through and I write all of that, and having a picture so that I can show them the picture to show them what we're making today. And so that's kind of, so when you are working on verb, noun, and syntax, right? Girl jump, or then you can go into a language lesson and then have them say, and you might have to teach a pronoun lesson to say I and you, but, I cut, or, you both have little toys, like you have a little boy and he has a girl or whatever. The girl cuts, the boy eats, the girl spreads, the girl, whatever, or spread peanut butter, bite, apple, whatever it is. And so bringing that all into something very basic. And like something this basic can go all the way to level 5, but it just depends on what you're prompting them, So for example, like level 5, having direct discourse, okay? That's a level 5 thing. What did your mom tell you about sticky fingers or something like that? You could, if you know the kid, you can say, what does your mom say when your fingers are sticky? My mom says, go wash your hands. Okay. Same activity, just how you prompt the language that you want them to use. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other things, but the highlighting piece is just because it all is very overwhelming of, well, what am I going to do? And so highlighting the ones that you feel either are emerging because you maybe heard them, or you know that they receptively understand it. If you gave like the PPVT and they could identify big, but you never have heard them use it in their language. I go through that. If it's already emerging, those were things that I would pick. And then things that like if they're going into kindergarten, they're going to need to know like mine, right? Like, no, that's mine, like during playtime or at recess. Like, how many times do our kids get in fights because they can't say mine? And so you will know, because you know the kid, which ones you're picking. But my biggest piece of advice is just try to keep the lesson super, super simple, because don't try to get super creative with it, because as we get more creative, the vocabulary tends to get higher. And so literally, like, I do basic functions like washing hands, having an apple as a snack, like literally cutting an apple or peeling a banana, or and then just having some kind of additional thing like peanut butter or chocolate or something like that. Using, like, I have a box full of Play School, like little people toys, because then you can use like he, she, them, you can use the pronouns, because I like correcting I and me and you is really like, it makes my brain hurt. And so having those manipulatives, and then like I just have a ton, and then I just like randomly use Google Images to just have a ton of the visuals, like to, if they're going to a place, like prepositional phrases, and having the little girl, and you have a picture of 6 places, and you just place the little girl on the picture and say, where is the girl? The girl is in the park. The girl is in the pool. The girl, working on those prepositional phrases. Or like if you're working on in, on, under, right? Or understanding where, the interrogative where. And then remember, you do it once they've showed proficiency, then you give them the reins and then make them use the language. But any other questions? Did I not go into something? This is all fine and dandy, but really what it does is it just tells you, it gives you a little bit more of a paragraph by paragraph explanation of each level. It describes it. And then it gives you like criteria for rating. And then like at the end, it just gives you examples of that level. So that's like level 1.
How long does the test take to give, Natasha?
It's not a test. It's really just like honestly, I would just do it's your language sample and you just analyze it that way.
Because like I have a little girl that really struggles with negation. Everything is not instead of don't, doesn't, and then answering or asking questions, and so it's just like we can work on it, and I can pull ideas and come up with ideas, and I got little magnetic people, but it's just like, okay, but I like how you have everything set up because it really makes you think ahead of time too, like, okay, how can I do this in like an activity kind of setting or
I think I had one that was where like asking.
because I have like the what are they asking cards or the different activities, but I feel like I keep using the same materials over and over and how to go outside my box. And that's why I was like, is there something out there like how you have these lesson plans set up? Like, is there something out there? Because like when I look at like your idea, for example, of the peanut butter and jelly, then it gets you thinking, well, I could do that this way, but use, an activity like that, but use this. And so, I mean, that's what I'm looking for is something to like, just give me that
Well, that's
idea to
like
move forward.
with Adrian's, like all of her hard drives, she could just like print them off basically, and she'd have. The other thing is, hold on, let me show you. The website, because I will give you a little idea.
So do they have those kind of lesson plans on the website? Or is that just your stuff?
The stuff I was showing you is all
Yours.
that I have made. Oh, I don't want to go to Facebook. Nope. What in the world? Are they like offline today or what? Yeah, it's usually themoodcenter.org. But they have like calendars. Maybe their website's down, but they have monthly calendars, and they will put out a lesson plan for like the activity of the month in all language level. And so, but I mean, I can make a shared folder of all of the ones that we've had over the 4 years that that I've worked with Adrian and the 2 students that we currently contract her for, because technically, I mean,
And that's up to you because you've put a lot of work into that, Natasha.
it would be organizing it so it's super easy to find what you want, which I mean, I could figure that out. So I think that's why wouldn't we like start compiling it? It makes sense to me.
I think too, it'd be neat if something like that, if we all did start kind of doing this is, and it's up to you guys, but like just sitting and again, making more, everybody bringing